Well, good morning, everybody. It's me, Mitch, and I want to talk today about a problem that I think pretty much all of us face trying to change our lives and get healthy, and that is, how do we deal with our doctors? And it's a real problem, and it's something that we address from time to time, but I think that it needs to be addressed a lot more than we have, because in my opinion, our doctors are probably one, besides addiction, are probably one of the prime reasons that our diets get sabotaged and we fail. And we fail because it's fear. Fear, one of the prime motivating emotions that scare us away from doing what all the evidence that we found tells us is the right thing to do. And yet we need doctors. I needed doctors. Doctors saved my life a little over 2.5 years ago when I had my brain surgery. I need doctors. And doctors can fix things, and modern medicine is tremendously advanced. But where the doctors aren't doing us any favors is in the fields that encompass metabolic health, because there's too much profit, and we all know that, and for too long there's been too much misinformation based on corruption and greed and agendas of those who, for one reason or another, think that eating meat is bad, all the way from Ellen G. White and John Harvey Kellogg, who thought that it promoted impure sexual thoughts and sin, all the way up to the big food companies and the big pharma companies that profit so greatly. So we need doctors. We need these doctors. We need modern medicine, especially to treat the end result emergencies that come from what we now know is the wholesale poisoning of the human race. So do we demonize these doctors, or do we try to understand why so many of them are just ignorant? Doesn't mean they're not smart. It means that they just have not been exposed to the kind of information and study results and epidemiological evidence about how well we do when we stop eating their processed stuff and we start eating real food. How many of them are just ignorant? In which case, why are they ignorant? Why haven't they figured this out yet? Why haven't they got the message? Well, obviously, they're not paying attention. Most of them are extremely busy people. This is outside of their wheelhouse. Second reason why they may, and I keep using the word ignorant, but the second reason they may be ignorant is because of the onslaught of the messaging and the narrative of virtually everybody that's in the medical community, from the government regulators to these agendized associations, Heart Association, Diabetes Association, Dietitians Association, that all profit greatly or are the recipients of endowments from those big companies and those people that do have agendas to keep us eating the quote healthy fruits and vegetables and healthy whole grains. Just about all of the medical licensing boards throughout the country are pretty well mandated by law to follow the mandates of the federal government, of the World Health Organization, and people like this. So in most of these doctors, there's also the fact that they've resigned themselves, that this is the way it's done, and they have a, quote, standard of care, which pretty well requires, for example, that whenever a cholesterol number gets over a certain amount, they are mandated to prescribe statins. The system has evolved over 100 years into this, and this is what we have now. Another factor with these doctors is doctors consider themselves, in most cases, superior to the rest of us. So it becomes an ego thing. And the longer they've been doing it, it seems, the longer their white coat gets. So when you go to your doctor and you have the absolute gall to tell them that, Doc, I think you're wrong, more than a proportionate number of them look at you like, who the hell do you think you are? I'm a doctor. How dare you contradict what I'm saying? Enter the lawyers who are just looking for another excuse to sue these doctors, so they're even more afraid to go against these, quote, standard of care guidelines that almost take the act of rational thinking away from them, even if they wanted to. So for a doctor to come out and jump over to, quote, our side is a very rare occasion. And those that have, a lot of them have paid the price. Very few of them can actually practice medicine anymore, in the current system. So how do you deal with that? Well, the obvious answer is find a new doctor if you don't like the one you have, but that's easier said than done. Most doctors, especially any doctors that have an understanding of healthy nutrition, you wait months and months just to get an appointment with them. The demand is there for these doctors, but the system won't allow these doctors to practice that way. And every day we learn more and more about how wrong most of them are. The propaganda machines of the big pharmacy companies and big food keep pumping out phony studies and misleading information and news releases that start you worrying again about, well, my cholesterol's a little high. Maybe I should take the statin. Maybe I need to eat those healthy fruits and vegetables. Maybe I'm just not getting what I need from my meat-only diet. And yet, there are so many of us that are prospering on this. Don't believe your lying eyes. Sounds like a good name for a country song. So what it takes is some knowledge, some resources, some evidence and some proof, and it takes guts. It takes guts to go in there and get in the face of a medical professional who we've been taught to respect our entire lives. It takes guts. And that's what I had to do. And now my doctor and I have a very nice relationship. She recommends what the standard of care guidelines, especially those at the VA, tell her to recommend. But wink, wink, nod, nod. She knows I'm not going to take statins. She knows I don't worry about my high cholesterol, and she knows why. Because she still has an open mind, and she's not a doctor. She's a nurse practitioner. So she doesn't have the ego that most of these MDs have. And that works in my favor, because basically here's a woman that can order any test, prescribe anything, get me the care I need in any other department, whether it be neurology, gastrointestinal, whatever it is. The resources are there, and she will just take my cues and take my word for it. It's great. I couldn't have it any better. I'm the captain of my own ship, and that's what you have to be. You're not going to change a lot of these doctors' minds, but you have to always be wary of the fact that they cannot dictate what you do. I mean, they try. They want to make laws that we're required to take certain vaccinations and things. But so far, still, we're the captain of our own ships. We have the autonomy. And nobody has the right to force us to put certain things in our body that we don't want to. The biggest conflicts come in the area of cholesterol. I've taken printed copies of some studies to my doctor. I don't know if she's read them or not, but I took her studies, and I'm going to put a link to a great study or a meta-analysis of many randomized controlled trials that actually shows that the older you get, the higher your cholesterol, the longer you live. In the cholesterol vein, I'm also going to put a link to a lecture from David Diamond, where he shows, in a way that any thinking human being can follow, that the outlandish claims of the effectiveness of statins are statistically manipulated and are meaningless. The next thing that you do with your doctor is you don't insult him or her. You say to him or her, I understand why you feel that way. One would think that that's actual fact. But I found out otherwise. And would you give me the benefit of the doubt of at least looking at what I'm looking at and tell me where I'm going wrong? And while you're doing that, would you, if you can't do it, have your staff do it, would you please get me copies of the studies that show inconclusively that I need to worry about my cholesterol being healthy and thin and all my other markers right where they're supposed to be? One of two things is going to happen. They're going to tell you to get the hell out and fire you as a patient, get mad and angry and insist that you take your statins because you don't know anything because you're dumb and stupid. Or they may give you the benefit of the doubt, and in very rare cases, and I mean very rare cases, they may even take a look at the stuff that you've taken the time and energy to present to them. Don't count on it. Don't hold your breath. So, back to the question, how do I handle my doctor? Try not to insult him. If he doesn't go along with you, the only choice you have is to find a doctor who does, or completely ignore him, and have confidence that you can ignore him without any danger to yourself. But the most important thing to gain that confidence is for you to do your own work, your own research, learn as much as you can, try to find out why their advice is wrong, and believe it. Many of you won't be able to do that. Many of you come to those of us in this space just looking for what meat can I eat and how should I eat it, and not concerned with the whys. And you're the ones, I think, that are most likely to fall prey to the fear that maybe your doctor might know more than you. And that's probably true in most cases. We need doctors. I still admire doctors. It's not their fault. It's the fault of the entire food and pharma medical establishment that profits from the status quo of feeding us foods that make us sick with chronic conditions and selling us doctor's visits, pharmaceuticals, to never cure these things but just treat them. It's a very fluid and dynamic situation. Understanding it is your best tool. For me, I'm better off without a doctor, period. And I basically go see mine once a year for a physical, and then only primarily to get my blood work. If I have an emergency, then I go to the emergency room. But as far as metabolic health goes, it's not the wheelhouse of any external doctor as far as I'm concerned. That's my responsibility. And that's why I've taken so much of my time in my life to learn the realities of good health and good nutrition. So with that, my friends, I'm going to eat my breakfast of what they call heart attack food. And I'm going to give you all the rest of the day off and eat meat.